you can't force people into using any technology. We tried that early on. It did not work well. You can tell them to do a lot of different things, and if they're not bought in, if they don't see the value, they're just going to give up on it very quickly. Let's stop trying to push things on our people to use. Let's put it all in paper and writing.
Clear.
What are the expectations? Who's doing what? And have them sign off on it before we even start anything, so that everybody's on the same page.
Welcome to Built Different, a podcast featuring teams, technology, and trendsetters who are changing the way that we build. I'm Grant Hagen.
And I'm Brian Vizarreta.
And we welcome you to join a community obsessed with questioning the status quo,
creating cultures of innovation,
and equipping everyone with powerful tools to quite simply build different.
Well, welcome into the Built Different podcast. I am your host, Grant Hagen. Really thankful that you came back and joined in with us here for episode 2. If this is your first time listening in, thank you all for joining with us. Go back and check out episode 1 that was released a couple weeks ago. We have just been overwhelmed. There's been some amazing just feedback from that first episode of just the sound bites that we've been posting and some of the good quotes that we have heard, and really just your excitement around some of these conversations that we're getting to have. And so thank you all for joining in with us. We have another great conversation slated for this week with our friends over at Haskell that are really choosing to approach innovation differently. And we think you're going to be really encouraged by these conversations with a few of our friends. And so these first few episodes that we've been recording have been from a construction conference from last year towards the end that have just been some really fun opportunities to engage with folks one-on-one and in person. And so we hope that you're just as encouraged with this episode as you were from the first one. And so just as a reminder, really why we're doing Built Different is really to connect individuals in a really disconnected industry. We know that some of these conversations and just opportunities to engage with folks really comes at a cost and really isn't as often as what we had hoped to be. And so we hope that some of these episodes just give you the opportunity to learn and engage with other people that you really may not have a chance to engage with. And so without further ado, we'll take you to the Groundbreak conference from New Orleans for this episode 2. Look forward to seeing you on the next episode, and we will talk soon. Thanks. So you guys are with Haskell. Give us a little bit of rundown of Haskell, the company. You guys can do that together or independently. And then, just a little bit about your roles, what you guys do there, and then we'll get into some really good stuff.
Yeah, awesome. Sounds good.
Cutler, take us away, man.
Here, yeah, so Haskell, design, build, general contractor. We're based out of Jacksonville, Florida. That's where the headquarters is. That's where our team is based, Dysruptek. So both Hamzah, myself, and the rest of the team there. We are about 65 years old, doing projects all over the globe. Kind of bread and butter is food and beverage, CPG. We do a lot of industrial manufacturing. We're projects all over the globe, right? So got offices all over the US, global. And so we're doing some healthcare, we're doing defense, doing a lot of aerospace, a lot of manufacturing, distribution, doing some data centers down south in Latin America. Got a lot going on. So exciting company. I think the interesting part, and obviously Preston Haskell, our founder, when he founded the company, big kind of genesis of Haskell was really creating the design build model. And, did a lot of lobbying around that to kind of make that happen, and obviously building an organization based around it. So,
and when you say design build, for the viewers on here, is that architecture and construction? Or do you guys partner with architecture firms? Give us a little lay of the land of
all under one roof.
Okay, that's awesome.
From concept, design, engineering to execution.
Awesome. That's great. Cool.
So,
super helpful.
Yeah.
Hamzah?
But that's pretty much the sum of Haskell. But where it kind of gets interesting is in 2018, new leadership, new CEO promoted from within the company. And the first thing that he did is let's look at where we're going to go, where are we going to be in 2025. And laid out a vision with 6 different pillars. And one of the pillars is being on the cutting edge of technology and innovation. And that's when they stood up Dysruptek. And it's a separate LLC, still wholly owned and operated by Haskell.
Nice.
But we function completely kind of separately from the mothership for a lot of different reasons. But some of them, bureaucracy, and we don't have to get, buried in the
That's a
the
whole
paperwork.
episode on itself, baby.
So that really allowed us, Cutler and myself, and we have 2 other team members to have that, independence and looking at all these different technologies and not having to be tied to the paperwork and the bureaucracy of a big company, and kind of also make investments in the space. It makes sense.
So Dysruptek, just to summarize it here, separate company owned by Haskell.
Yeah.
That happened in 2018.
Yes.
Okay. Just the 4 of y'all. Did it start with the 4? Did it grow over time? Give us a little mini roadmap of that.
It started with 3.
Okay.
Then it went down to 2. And now we were 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
And all within Haskell too? Were there
Yeah.
outside folks that came in from other teams or other companies or?
For sure. So that's actually probably a good segue into a little bit of my background and, the genesis of how I wound up at Haskell and in the space in general. So full transparency, do not have an architecture, engineering, or construction background. They brought me in specifically looking for someone that necessarily didn't have any already pre-existing biases of how things should be done or whatnot. So my background's core development, M&A for software company for most of my career.
It stands for
Mergers and acquisitions.
Okay.
So how do you grow a company, acquiring other smaller companies, adjacent companies, merger of equals, bringing in financing partners, like how do you roll these things up in a successful manner? And so that was my background. Joined the team. Really, Hamzah was technically the first hire because he was already at Haskell. So he was working with our VDC team, and that really was influential in how we utilized VDC as a tech stack for us. And, that's kind of, launching our drone program, some other exciting stuff. So he was an easy pull from
with
internal.
drone deploy back then too.
Yeah.
Which is pretty awesome.
I'm gonna parking lot your first impression. Don't let us end the episode without hearing your first impression of the construction industry. Coming from your background, we'll be really interested. Unless you got a quick thought to it now.
Yeah, no, I mean it's so. First of all, coming from software, we were always building, cool apps, cool websites, cool commerce platforms and whatnot, but everything wasn't necessarily tangible until kind of the final product. So I was wrapping my head around that. So the first thing was, wow, these projects are awesome. And the second thing was, this is extremely complicated, right? So I'm not going to lie, I came in pretty naive. I came in with saying like, okay, I'm coming from IT services software. Like how hard could it be, right? Finance guy, typical,
And I built
had a little
deck.
ego going on, right? Basically coming in and just got humbled real quick, right? So it's impressive what we do. It's very important, but it is, it's a great opportunity to innovate. So that's kind of also why I took it too, because I was mainly in retail software prior. So seeing a lot of the transformation, seeing digital transformation take hold of an industry and completely, literally raise it to the foundation and then build it back up and see what it is now. In retail. Yeah. So I looked at the construction space and was like, very kind of similar anecdotes around that. So, but that was kind of my first impression was like, how hard could it be? And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, okay.
Welcome to the industry.
Yeah,
welcome to the fun. That's awesome.
But it was a fresh breath of air. It was really exciting to work with somebody that didn't have those preconceived notions of this is how it's done. And I applaud our leadership for finding somebody that, from the outside have a completely different paradigm on looking at things and not just like, yeah, that's how it is. It's like literally the first couple of months was like, why are we doing it this way? I'm like, oh, you're right. Why are we doing it this way?
Yeah, well said.
It was a nice little sounding board that we both had on, going back and forth about like, okay, there's.
I would explain something. And I'm like, yeah, this is just how it is. And he was like, but why? I'm like, that's a good question.
Okay, so we got a guy coming in from the outside. You're coming from the inside. Give us a little lay of the land of that.
Yeah, so it started with again, as Cutler mentioned, the VDC group grew up the drone program internally. Again, it's in 2016, 2017. It's big on drone deploy, and we started that internally. And then I started looking at different tech and how we can integrate that. And then every time I started looking at something that doesn't have anything to do with VDC, I was quickly kind of, slap on the wrist is like, hey, what are you doing? No, that's not your job.
And what were those? Because that is something I'm really curious to know. Like, what wouldn't be considered VDC? From
Communication. That was a big thing.
Okay.
I was like, like how do we Procore? We didn't even have Procore back then. It was like, how do we even function without having a central project management tool? Yeah. Everything was running on servers.
So it's kind of like stay in your swim lane. Don't go outside. Why are you getting outside of that? Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I've been trying to kind of like look at VR stuff and how do we implement some of that, augmented reality. And yes, you can tie some of them back into the VDC world because they have the model, but they're not the end users of it, right? You still have to get it in front of either the owner or you go out to the field and get it in the hands of the superintendent. And that's when I was like always kind of being, no, stop doing that. That's not your job. And plus VDC is a very demanding job. There's just so much to do all the time. It's like staying at the office till 7, 8 p.m. Not something that I'm ever proud of, but you have to finish those jobs because they're pouring concrete the next morning. So yeah, so that's when I started looking at, talking internally about what can we do to look at all these different tech and methods and ways, and they were actually just thinking about standing this Dysruptek, and I was like jumping up and down. Please.
And give us a little genesis of that idea got tossed out. I mean, to have a separate LLC is a little interesting, and I'm sure there's some great stories behind that. But like, how did you come across hearing about that idea that was potentially coming online?
That was our CFO, Bradslin. We had Don Baldwin, who has retired. He was retired now, but they started this whole idea of we need to have an outlet for our employees to contribute, to share ideas or things that can help Haskell be better. So they actually, even before they got to Dysruptek, they started talking about Shark Tank style, pitch. Like, do you have an idea? Just come to us. We'll schedule a time. You can pitch it and we'll look at it and we can say, yes, we're funding this or not.
And what was their motivation? Was it because of this like 2025 vision? Was it kind of their own personal interest? Like, why did they want to get invested in it as a CFO? And what was the other gentleman?
Strategic marketing.
Yeah, so he was our SVP of strategy.
Okay.
So yeah, I think the writing was on the wall, right? So again, fortunately, like Hamzah said, we have a very forward-thinking leadership team. The genesis was, you walked on a job site 30 years ago and today, and not a lot changed. Just started to get kind of wind of what was going on and saying like, all right, well, we've always kind of loosely had some function of innovation, basically like an idea Dropbox. Nothing really happened with it. And if you want to make things happen, you have to have some dedicated team, resource, and budget to do this. And then they also said there's a good opportunity for longer term plays by, making strategic investments in these companies and supporting their growth and actually, obviously playing in the upside of that. So
You make a really good point there though, right? Like the corporate venture arm to me is a super interesting phenomenon, right? Whether you invest or not, you still help these companies develop their product, right? There is a big time investment on your side, depending on how early that company is. Mm-hmm. And if you see an opportunity, right? Like, why not share in that upside of the investment from your own personal side, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. And corporate venture is something that is very close to my heart, obviously, but it's an awesome space. I mean, you're basically, you have the backing of a large organization. That's your sandbox, right? That's your playground. However, it's also trying to kill you at the same time. There's like an immune system in corporate of like, this is the way we do things, that's M&A too. Like, it's like if if there's one good way to kill a good startup and it's buy them and then smash them into, how you do things. Right. And that just, that's not the mixture. So it's kind of this, we're taking some exciting innovations externally and we're bringing them inside. And then we're also helping support those internal innovations and providing them an outlet to be further vetted and explored and invested in, and then spinning those out to the broader market as well. So that's what's pretty exciting. It's kind of this two-way street. That's pretty cool, but it brings its unique challenges.
I mean, but even just giving access to a job site, right? Like
it's huge.
You do need to test things out, like giving access to people from your company that can respond with qualitative data, right? Yep. I want to hear more about, the journey of kind of starting the program to where it is now, because a lot of people know where it is now and everybody always sees the winners. But how did that kind of start? Like, how did that all come about when it came to technology implementation at the project level?
Yeah. So, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, we just, when we saw something, especially early on, we saw a technology that we thought is going to bring value. We go to the field and we say, hey, help us pilot this, help us test it. Or not even that. Sometimes just like, hey, you need to use this, actually. It's a little bit self-interest, so to say. But we learned quickly that that's not a good approach. And one of the things that we started harping on was like, one of the main barriers for adopting new technologies is, one, they don't have time, two, they don't have budget for it. So we said, we'll take the budget off of your plate. You don't have to worry about it. Yeah, we're paying for it as Dysruptek. I just need you to do it. Just use it. Tell me how it is, and we can give that feedback back to the technology company, and they can make the product better. But we quickly realized again that that's just one barrier. That doesn't mean that they got the buy-in. So even if you paid for it and you got in front of them and you onboarded and you taught them on how to use it and what the value looks like, that doesn't really mean that they're going to use it. So in order to get the buy-in, we had to really revisit our approach from the ground up. And like in early 2019, we just bumped the brakes in a sense and said, let's stop kind of trying to push things on our people to use, let them come to us with ideas or with problem statements. And then we can give them options, and then they can take a look at it. We can sit down on demos, even try it out with a paid pilot just on a short period of time to see how it works for them. And we got so much more success in that model because people are now, they're like, it's as simple as make them think it's their idea and they'll just 100% buy into it. And it makes the whole difference. And it's not trickery in a sense. We're not just trying to trick people into, it's just like, no, you came to me with a problem statement. Here is the solutions. You pick, and now it's your thing. It's your idea, right? Dysruptek is only helping you, stand it up and make sure that it's going according to plan. And we help with the constant evaluation and looking at what data streams are coming from that, what problems is the problem statement being solved for or not. But then also what limitations are they running into?
Hey guys, real quick as we take a pause from the episode here, if you could think about how you found this podcast, whether it was someone posting about it on LinkedIn or someone sharing an episode with you, we know that the only way to grow this community is through word of mouth. And if you found something insightful or thought of someone as you were listening into this episode, consider sharing it over with them. We've already been encouraged about the ways that you guys are engaging with this content, and we want to grow this community organically. The reason we created this podcast was really to connect teams and individuals in a really disconnected industry. And we hope that you can join us along in that journey. Thanks for tuning in. Now let's get back into it.
Well, we'll back up for just a sec too, because it wasn't just all of a sudden like everybody started coming to us, right? So it was building that brand, up front was really focused internally. So now, I think, we would be somewhat recognized in the broader market, but internally that was part of the reason branded as Dysruptek by saying like, instead of it being, well, just go to Hamzah and Cutler for, innovation stuff, it was like Dysruptek. So that's kind of, it's all about Dysruptek. That's the platform. But it was a lot of just internal communication. It was explaining what we do. It was gaining the trust of a lot of people internally as well, especially me. And, when we were out there pushing stuff, eventually it did become that, all right, wait a minute, we see this taking place. But at that point, we'd been out there enough to where we started to get pulled, and we found that, pretty quickly, those ones that we were getting pulled into were 10 times more successful than the earlier pilots that we were doing when we were trying to push things.
Our motto is 3 words: invest, invent, innovate.
Yep.
So we do make investments in a small number of startups that we think are valuable and solve a problem that we care about.
Totally.
But that it's not for the long-term play of acquiring them later down the road. It's more of to become a strategic investor that can help them grow in a direction where we would like them to go.
For sure.
And then maybe get that upside at the end, like when they get acquisitions.
Yeah.
Invent is we have, dedicated R&D center space that we get people to invent things, even like either software or hands-on robots, stuff like that. And then innovate, which is the bigger bucket that give me any idea you have, right? And we do have the Shark Tank style competition that, submit any ideas and we'll pick the top 5 and get you in front of the executives. And it's a big kind of platform that everybody pitches their idea, and then we find one of them.
So as far as technology, right? Companies do this differently all the time, where they allow the projects to buy technology at the project level, or they all go through one direct source. And you have an interesting relationship where your field teams are able to get access to the technology of whatever they choose, but they still resort to you to be the buffer and the shield and making sure that it's vetted and actually like ready to go.
Yeah.
Can you talk more about kind of like how that relationship came about? And was that always that, was that by design, or did that just kind of come about?
It grew, and that's kind of what Cutler was alluding to is the brand, right? And making sure that everybody trusts that if Dysruptek says this works, then it probably does, because that means Hamzah tried to break it 17 times and possibly failed twice. So that's something that we say a lot of times, like we are the filter, so to say, of all the noise. There's so much going on. We take a look at so many different things on a high level, but then go to the next level with some of these startups when we see value, when we see that there's something that they're solving for that's different. So that's the part of it is like, how do we filter? How do we make sure that some of these technologies have been vetted? And then, and the interesting part is before we even go and say, this is enterprise-wise, this is like anybody can use it, it's really still a la carte, so to say. So they can get to choose whatever technology they want to implement in their own project. but it's something that's been vetted, that's been tested, that's been piloted, that's been reported on, and everybody can attest to its working and it integrating with our tech stack, and it's
And its
practically
value.
and it has value in it, and it's practically paid for by our technology fee within the project sense. And
So that payment structure is incredible, right? But it could also be a double-edged sword, right? What is the the process to request the payment, right? Because you can't just pay for everybody on every single job, right? Like without having some sort of vetting system internally.
Yeah. So that's what Hamzah was alluding to. Basically, we go through this filtering process and validating, what, is this something that the organization would find value in? And then there's a certain point where once the kind of report out is done, it's handed off to like operations IT saying like, hey, here's what we found. Here's the recommendations. Here's what our people are saying about said solution. And then do they fit the bill or not?
Well, I was actually meaning more on the project side, right? Like they just got technology for free. They have to make sure it actually gets used and you get your money worth, right? Like at that senior standpoint.
well, it's not for free per se. I mean, it's still baked into their project budget, but and they have access to all these different tools. It's just what they use to utilize. That's up to them, and you can't force people into using any technology. We tried that, and it did not work well.
Yep.
You can tell them to do a lot of different things, and it's just if they're not bought in, if they don't see the value, they're just going to give up on it very quickly.
And when you say baked into the job, is that a percentage of the project cost? Do you guys evaluate it on kind of a monthly rate? Like these are some details that I know some of our listeners are very, very interested, because I don't believe it's like a secret sauce. It's more of, hey, there's tech, there's tools, there's equipment, whatever you want to call it, that needs to be baked into the operation of a project. I mean, how do you guys approach that?
Well, and so just to be clear as well, when we're from the budget that we are allotting to help pilot and validate these solutions, that's on kind of case by case basis. So we're not running that through the entire organization via Dysruptek. So just to be
super helpful.
Yeah, so piloting and testing and all that stuff. So even if somebody comes to us with a problem statement for a solution that's not, enterprise-wise yet, that's Dysruptek budget. We cover the cost to test it. But when we say this is enterprise ready and we have it, in our toolbox, then it becomes part of what we call a technology fee. So any project that you look at, the list,
The general conditions.
right?
Yep.
There's that technology fee and how much we're charging for it, and even we get. It's not really run by Dysruptek. This is now going to operations and IT and all that.
Yep.
But even like project managers, they try to
See
push
that.
back on that, and they're like, actually, I don't want to use all of that. They're like, no. This is a very simple percentage that we apply to all projects. It's not you're not special. in a sense.
So what's bucketed in that group of enterprise tools? Like, give us some examples, whether that's generic from reality capture, Procore.
It's Procore is the main thing, and then you got any IT support, Microsoft Suite, all of that stuff.
Sure.
And then everything else that we bring to operations from the Dysruptek side that we say, this is ready to be enterprise-wide. Like one example is pipe closeout. That's one of the big kind of successful pilots that we had.
early on.
That's an enterprise ready right now, and it's just part of that. But they have access to it. They can use it, but they don't have to. That's kind of the structure.
What do you define as criteria for enterprise ready? Like, what criteria are you looking for it to be considered enterprise ready? Is it a certain amount of projects? Is it, a certain level of success? Like,
Definitely, first of all, certain level of success. So what's the value? Again, going back to what's the value to our project team? So that's kind of number one. Going down a pretty robust list, it goes down into security, maturity of product, stability. I mean, those are kind of the big ones, right? So,
Right. Yeah. So we start with implementation plan, right? Before we even go into any pilot project, it's like, what are we trying to test? Who's testing it? And then what does success look like, right? And we have the quantitative metrics of success and qualitative metrics. And then we go back after the pilot, after that specific period, and we measure that. We talk to the people, we get the numbers from them. Did we meet the criteria that we set or not? So that's step one, right? Did it work in that project? before we go enterprise, we usually do what we call like a scaled pilot. So yes, we did it in 3 projects. They all said, this is great. But what if we do it in 20? Do they all say it's great? Yes, you're going to get that one person that says, this is shit. I don't like it. And that's fine, right? You don't have to get 100% success rate. But once you get to that, there is that level that Dysruptek, we go into reporting mode, which is let me document everything that we did in this, including, how we started, how do we find them, what problem statement there's of our implementation plan, the pilot, the responses, the everything. And then we hand it off to operations. And one of the first things that we get from IT is, here's my IT list of questions.
Yeah.
That this company needs to answer before we can say this is an enterprise level solution.
How easy that gets overlooked. But I mean, we haven't had an episode yet just on security concerns, and it's been into each episode through different conversations and whatnot. But that's a good thing. That's a good IT.
Yeah,
100%. And just shout out to Haskell IT. If any of you guys are listening, y'all are awesome. We had an interesting start at the beginning there, but we figured it out. And that's what I think is interesting is collaboratives. They're very, very much there to support it. So they're like, look, we don't really have a dog in this fight, right?
Yeah.
It's just we're here to enable and make sure that
we heard a lot of
do the best work of their lives.
We're here to support you, right?
Exactly.
That's a pretty resounding theme. Right. I'm curious, does Dysruptek ever get asked to do services from project teams?
I think inherently we get dragged into it, right?
Yeah,
so
of course.
There's just by these pilots that we're doing, so there's definitely a significant amount of hand-holding that takes place in that, and sometimes we have to take the wheel from time to time with some of those too. But that's typically where that would come in is our ever expanding VDC organization.
Sure.
So at that point, they're typically the ones kind of delivering the services.
Makes sense.
At any significant scale, right? Because they have the dedicated resource, super small team.
Yeah, and that can trip up some people too, right? It's like, whoa. I didn't sign up for that. Nor, I mean, just even identifying swim lanes. Like, hey, here's where we're going to be helpful. Here's where you're going to see value, but then here's where you are going to need to put effort into this as well. And oftentimes that gets overlooked.
And how it started, it was like that. It was like, just come and do it for me. Right. And we did that at the beginning, again, just to show them how it works and what the value that it brings. But then they want you to come back and do it again.
Yeah, like see you Monday.
And do it again. And do it. And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm. And this is actually the spawn of the implementation plan. Like, no, let's put it all in paper and writing. What are the expectations? Who's doing what? And have them sign off on it before we even start anything, so that everybody's on the same page.
What about at a customer success level? Like, are you guys typically interacting and engaging with those teams at the tech side of life, or is that kind of, hey, we want our project teams to engage with them? That to me also seems like a potential gray area. But
we do
definitely gray area.
Yeah, we set up the monthly or weekly cadence of those calls with the technology providers, customer success, but we're always on the line with them, and documenting again. That's something that I cannot preach more. Is documentation is key, like making sure that you are capturing all of that information that's happening in the monthly or weekly or however you want to set it of customer success calls. What are the questions that are popping up, and what are the limitations that they're coming across and stuff like that? Because you're not going to find those details later down the road when you're talking to people.
Sure.
How do you currently share stories within the company of successes? Like, are all these implementation plans kind of like available for people to kind of look, or how does that kind of, if I was there, how would I be able to figure out what tech we're using at the company?
Yeah. I mean, we have an internal newsletter that we shoot to everybody. And I keep joking about that because you cannot unsubscribe from that. If you have an @haskell.com email, you are going to get that newsletter. Whether you like it or not, whether you open it or not, that's up to you. But the newsletter is there. We're always shouting off the rooftop, and we're making it super simple, something that's, very easy to digest and read. 3 sections, like what are we working on? What are we looking at? And innovator spotlight. So what we're working on is highlighting, pilot projects that we did or we're working on currently. What are we looking at is these are the technologies that we are evaluating that we think can bring value, but we haven't piloted yet. So we put them in front of our people and we get a lot of responses from them. We get a lot of, leads, so to say, even internally, we kind of call them leads. But then Innovator Spotlight, this is kind of highlighting the success stories. And that's how we maintain the brand throughout, is like, let me tell you about what we did for this project and how they found it valuable and useful, and it saved them time and money.
And are there hard numbers in there as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. And then, tech showcases that we do. So hosting innovative companies to share kind of their story, try to drum up interest. And again, it's really driving the conversation, right? So it's just, quite frankly, we don't have all the answers. I don't think really anybody does today, but it's like getting the conversation going and getting in that engagement and asking those questions and the willingness to do something new.
I'm curious, what is Dysruptek measured on? Like at a corporate level? Like are there things that you guys kind of have at the end of the year, whether objectives or milestones or, key things to help, like you guys want to grow the team?
Yeah.
And you guys want to show the value, like from a Haskell level to Dysruptek, like what are your guys' like key things that you're showing? Hey, we obviously are providing value, see it in the newsletters and obviously these stories and things that we're sharing. What else outside of that?
So broad set of metrics. We're obviously, financial investors, but we're also strategic is the kind of core value of what we're trying to do, right? So there's several metrics that go along with it. Our team has individuals with, kind of what they're kind of measured by.
Yep.
And, at first we were setting out really, really high level objectives like, all right, we want to do X number of pilots annually. We want to scale, or we want to propose one solution in a year to scale to the business. Things along those lines. And again, we still operate off similar metrics that are set out for our overall objectives for the year. But I think it's an interesting call out that typically some of the more meaningful opportunities that take place throughout the year are not necessarily something we identified earlier on, right? So, we have to leave those somewhat open-ended in a sense of saying, what's the value, but that's the exciting part too, is, it always ends up, I always reflect back on the year and I'm like, man, I didn't even plan on that. And that actually ended up being something that was pretty successful.
And we set our own OKRs at the beginning of the year
for our
to
team
kind
internally.
of like go back and revisit that just for our own, growth, so to say.
And are those intentionally separate, strategically connected to Haskell's overall objective? I mean, I would assume yes, but like it kind of walk us through some of that too.
Yeah, absolutely. So the executive leadership team have specific KPIs for each unit, so to say. So we try to kind of either match that or go more aggressive. So if they say KPI for Dysruptek is to, evaluate 100 solutions, my internal and within Dysruptek OKR is going to be double that, just because I want to push the limit, right? I want to see how else we can take this further on. But to us, it's really not about the number of technologies or solution. It's more the people, the engagement, and did we get everybody's voice heard, so to say. Even internally, that's the most important part for us, is getting the employees that podium to present their own ideas, right? And not just be consumers of these technologies. That no, what problem statements do you want to solve for? If it's available in the market, we'll go out and get it. But if it's not, let's go build it.
Yeah. That actually poses a really good question too. Have you guys ever considered building your own platforms?
Yes.
Like, hey, I have problem statements that are coming in, and hey, we've done some evals and some pre-quals, and we don't see anything out there. When do you make? I mean, that's a big decision.
Careful what you wish for, Grant.
Right.
Careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
So the short answer is yes. And what's awesome is that's coming from our people, right? So it's coming from all of our employees. And I think it's the diverse employee base that we have that enables that. But again, Dysruptek being the platform to unlock it, understand what those areas of opportunity are. And then again, we're always looking what's in the market, but that's the exciting part about the space, right? A lot of these things haven't been built yet. And there's still tons of green space. So we have several examples of that where we built something internally to leverage, and it ends up saying like, all right, this is a lot of value for our enterprise. The broader market also is starting to show demand for it, which is pretty exciting. So we got a couple examples on it.
Yeah, one of the main success stories that I presented about here in Groundbreak, which is Hero, our own kind of virtual reality safety training platform.
Cool.
Yes, there are others that are doing it, but I think we took a different angle from it. And it's not really a training platform. It's more of a training assessment. It's like, do you recognize hazards or not? It's really that simple. And we've been using it for a couple of years. We've been seeing a lot of value from it. But now we're getting to like, how do we get this to the broader market? And we have maybe an announcement here to make.
Yeah,
Be like an exclusive.
I think
for
we
this.
I think we can roll it out. So yeah, this can be an exclusive. I think this is the right platform for it.
Fire
Right.
away.
I mean,
We-
global audience.
we
Let's do it.
partnered with Mindforge to bring Hero to the entire
Wow.
industry.
I
Yeah.
mean, that deserves a
Wow.
pretty big congrats.
So yeah,
Walk us through that.
Exclusive.
I mean, that's a big. Is this one of those first opportunities for you? I mean, I'm assuming this is kind of new grounds and territory for you guys too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's others that are successful within Haskell, but now again, we get to a point where it's like, how do we go outside? And we joked around a little bit. It was like, yes, you'll be an SDR and I'll be the AE, and let's figure it out. Let's bring in some leads and try to sell this. So we're starting to look at partners that can provide that bigger platform to deliver it, and we get our cut on the side. We don't really harping on that. We're not in it for to make money. We always have that big plank at the top of my doors for the betterment of the industry. Right? It's not really for Haskell. It's not really for Dysruptek. It's for everybody.
Well, team, this has been awesome.
Yep.
Super fun. I I don't know how Brian and I get to sit across here and learn so much from you guys. Any last or statements or thoughts that you guys wanted to share that we didn't get to?
no, I mean, it's just saying, reach out if you're interested to learn more. If we can, help share some knowledge about how we got here, or if you're trying to stand up a program, or if you're trying to better understand how you can work with some of this. Again, we don't necessarily have all the answers, but happy to kind of share our experience. And I would just encourage everybody, and obviously if they're already listening, they're an innovator in their own right. So that's nothing new there, but just keep pushing the envelope. It's not the easiest space to be building a tech company in. It's not the easiest space to be, an operator in, or be building anything, period. Right. Especially, now. But it's an exciting time, and we're still early, so this is good stuff.
Yeah, and it takes a village, really.
Definitely, for sure.
Yeah.
Rising tide lifts all ships.
Nobody can change the industry by themselves.
That has been in every episode,
Yep.
which is
Yeah.
just, I mean, it's so true. And our kind of idea of what Built Different is standing for is highlighting folks who are choosing to build things differently.
Yep.
You guys are choosing to build innovation within your company differently. And that's important. And it's a really awesome thing to highlight. Well, thank you guys so much. This has been a real treat. I appreciate the folks that are tuning in and listening. We hope you guys have enjoyed the episode here today, and we will see you on our next episode of Built Different. See you soon.
Make sure to subscribe to Built Different on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere you listen to podcasts. Let's build this community together.